thus enabling global certifications. He subsequently acquired that company. Mohan began his Rotary journey in 2005-06 with Rotary Club Bangalore Penia. 3 years back, he chartered a new club as its president, that's Rotary Club Bangalore Prime. His classification is business process consulting. You'll be amazed to learn that Mohan's district RID 3190 is the first Rotary district in the world to be ISO 9001 and ISO 27001. That itself is a humongous honor. Mohan represents the Ellen Meadows Prosthetic Hand Foundation US as its global ambassador. In this role, over 25,000 below-elbow prosthetic hands has been provided in India, Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, Mauritius, Nepal, and Zambia, absolutely pro bono. He's the director for South Asia for SPROF, which stands for Strategic Planning Rotarian Fellowship Group. A strategic planning group. He has been bestowed as Paul Harris Fellow by SPROF for his commitment to strategic planning. A very unique recognition by a fellowship group to a Rotarian. He also had the distinction to present a technical paper to the SPROF board, which comprises a past RI president, Rotary president nominee, four RI directors, and 4 current RI directors. He is recognized by Rotary International as one of the 6 champions of health in the Rotary world. In his very recent role, he is spearheading the Health, Education, and Wellness Rotary Action Group, which is called as URAD, Prosthetic Limbs Initiative globally. He is a recipient of Indian Achievers Award 2020 in recognition of outstanding professional achievements and contribution in national building by the Indian Achievers Forum. He has featured in the Rotary magazine, Rotary News, and 4 of his articles is published in Rotary International blogs. And that's it. He's also on the 2 Rotary. He's also on the 2 Rotary podcasts, one from Canada and the other from the US. He has always believed in learning and development as a foundation for expanding opportunities. Some of the certifications undertaken include Social Impact Strategy from Penn University, Pennsylvania, Diploma in Modern Psychology, and so on. He has a certification in Diversity, Inclusion, and Belonging by Pat Wader, who is credited with the term DIB. He has survived tsunami in 2004, earthquake in 2015, and he is happily married to Rotary. That's all for Mohan. Mohan, the floor is yours. Over to you. Thank you so much. So you're mute.
Sir, unmute and talk.
I said, Mohan, next 40 minutes, all yours. Let's start.
Thank you so much. Greetings, friends. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. And special greetings to Convenor, our International Vice Chair, and Tom Gump, my friend, whom I gave a last-minute invitation, and he could still make it. Thank you, Tom Gump, for that. And greetings, one and all. So just give me a second. I'm going to share my screen. Oh, CM, my screen sharing is disabled. Can you enable it? Yeah. Just give me a second. Good. Is my screen visible?
Yeah.
Good. So greetings, everybody. Today we are going to have basically a conversation on DEI. Please understand, it is not a training. It is not something that each one of us can profess, no, that we're extremely competent at that. So in this process of conversation, we'll get to know at what level of the DI practices do we understand, and then probably we have built in these practices, or how do we ensure our understanding will take us into a better implementation. So the conversation will focus on some of the core concepts of DEI. And because of the paucity of time, and there are so many other things to discuss, I will specifically not discuss on diversity from age, sex, gender, ethnicity, race perspective, etc., because we have a fair idea in terms of that diversity aspect. I would be looking into the other diversity and the other equity and inclusiveness aspects. What are the benefits of the DI initiative from a Rotary Club perspective? How do we move forward by integrating this into our vision? And how do we take forward in terms of a sensitization at a leadership perspective? What are the best cultures that what we can look at when we're looking at empathy as such? We have to understand the difference between emotion and empathy. Emotion is something where we feel for. Empathy is nothing but an actionable item as far as emotion is concerned. Also, DI is nothing but having a candid conversation amongst ourselves, and definitely we need to have a sort of courageous conversation, and we will also discuss about psychological safety that enables this process. In the process, what happens? We will be looking at, are we creating a safe environment? Are we creating, building in an inclusive environment? Paul Harris was a visionary. You have to look at his statement, which was written in an essay in 1935. Paul Harris said, Rotary holds the interests of society, demand that there be a place where people of diverse races, faith, and political parties can meet in happy fellowship. And the Rotary provide that place. So he was a visionary right from the day he started. Rotary has to be diverse, and there has to be happiness built around the fellowship. So what is the driver for the DEI? If you look at our manual of procedure 4.070, which speaks about diversity of membership, it specifically states each club or Rotary club shall endeavor to build a well-balanced membership that celebrates point one, diversity, equity, and inclusion. It is there in our MOP. No club or Rotary club, regardless of when it joined RI, may in any way limit membership due to gender, race, color, creed, national origin, or sexual orientation, or impose any membership condition not specifically allowed by RI constitution or bylaws. So it is very clear that a right-hander club or a left-hander club is something not a desired situation from an MOP or an RI perspective. So any membership provision or condition in conflict with this section is null, void, and without effect. So when it is an MOP, that means it is a mandate. What are the drivers of DEI? You cannot have anything that is driven without any larger objective. So we need to understand what are the pain points that presently what we have. Is it probably the membership growth? Very shortly, we're going to have the details probably on 1st August in terms of how we have done globally. India has done just reasonably better. Globally, we are still on the positive side, but it could have been better. But if you roll back in the last 10 years, 15 years, probably there's a question mark in terms of the severe attrition. So be it a club level or be it the Rotary from a global perspective, is DEI the answer is what we need to introspect. So from a club perspective, is your club vibrant? Is your club effective? So you need to again correlate your club strategy with respect to DEI. in the process of DEI, are there any rooms for improving the club's performance? So this is going to set the context for DEI for Rotary at large. There's a beautiful quote which says, when a flower doesn't bloom, you don't fix the environment. I mean, you fix the environment, not the flower. So understanding of DEI is very important from fixing the environment. So today, if you take DEI, the whole crux of DEI is on the culture of the club. That is what people like Tom Gum and Stephanie, etc. are speaking now, that this is no longer your grandpa's club. So ideally what should happen is, every club should undergo a culture audit. Do you think culture audit is something new for Rotary International? Absolutely not. In fact, the office at Evanston is certified for a great place to work. So at a club level, if you are looking at a cultural audit that can happen, some of the key things that what you could look at from the culture at a club level is, are people excited by the vision of Rotary International? Are people excited by the vision at the club level if you have one? Is it motivating the Rotarians? Are our club leaders practicing what they preach? The mission is very clear and it gives us a sense of purpose and a direction like a GPS. Are Rotarians working as part of a team? Does every Rotarian believe that he or she can have a positive impact? Are we looking at Rotarians, in the club, as our unique proposition? These are some of the cultural considerations. You could look at it from a cultural audit perspective, whether you do an audit or not, but these are the cultural considerations. When there is a disagreement, there's a consensus for a win-win approach. So if you look at global organizations, then you know that, it's a norm to disagree. So does your club allow for this disagreement process? Are there good alignments of all your goals, from a larger perspective, be it your strategic plan or your action plans? Is the teamwork used to accomplish rather than hierarchy? It's very important for us to understand what is the difference between a role and a position. In fact, if you look at most of the RI presidents, after they step down, they come back to the club level, either at sergeant at arms or as a bulletin editor. Do you encourage learning at all levels in the club? Is the work delegated so that people get to see the bigger picture in terms of why we are in? I know that for countries like India, by default, we are there for the pulse polio immunization program, even though, we are here as part of the surveillance programs. That is because the communication has been effective to the bottommost pyramid of the Rotarian. So, in the parlance of quality, if you don't improve, you deteriorate. Are you improving? Is there innovation at the club? This could be some of the considerations. I would like to stress upon one more thing, which is very, very important from a culture aspect, from a DEI perspective, is the psychological safety. I would like to dwell a little bit on this so that we get a clear understanding in terms of what psychological safety is all about. Psychological safety is a culture where members feel safe speaking upon a team, and they are given a voice to express. That is very important. It is just not providing a safe environment. It is that I can probably take a chance, speak up, ask questions, and sometimes I can be vulnerable without judgment. So if you look at the judgment per se, I wouldn't be covering it, but we have to understand there is always an unconscious bias. So is this unconscious bias detrimental to the culture of the club? That is something that we need to consider. So what happens because of a psychological safe environment is you're able to express yourself, and sometimes, right, it is good to have a creative conflict, even to disagree. I think this is the single biggest challenge. It is not easy. So what happens is it requires a high levels of empathy and authenticity of the team. Only when you have authenticity of the team, you will be able to build in trust. The trust is very, very essential, right, from a team's perspective. How do you tell if there's a psychological safety that exists or not? So when there is psychological safety, right, there are a lot of risky issues that surface, and team members freely oppose it. People challenge it in the team, they disagree, or they are outcome focused, and then finally, they would like to act upon it. Teams that lack psychological safety will not consider disagreements. This is sometimes, right, is a cultural barrier that what we need to consider. So, in a very small nutshell, if you're looking at diversity, equity, and I've also added belonging, because I've done a course and I've been following Pat Wetters, and she is the one who coined the phrase belonging. So what is the diversity? Just as an example, diversity is where everyone is invited to the party. Inclusion means everybody gets an opportunity to contribute to the playlist. Equity means everyone has the opportunity to dance. Unless and until we provide the diversity, inclusion, and equity, there is no sense of belonging. Diversity, inclusion, and equity cannot work as silos. Only when there's a harmony, only when there's a synergy between DI and D, the belonging comes in. So if you have a belonging, you will feel part of the organization, and right, you continue to contribute and thereby engage. Let us look at some definitions. There are thousands of definitions. We will not go through all that, just to get a fair idea. And we'll also look at the Rotary definition, right, of these terms. So what is diversity? It is the quality of being different or unique at the individual or group level. Point to be noted here is including group level. Is the group itself different? Is the group itself diverse? All the ways in which people differ in their characteristics that make one individual or group distinct from one another. That means there is a uniqueness, and we need to respect that uniqueness. From a Rotary perspective, Rotary is very clear. It says we welcome people of all backgrounds, cultures, experiences, and identities. So each one of us, we are different in many forms. We speak different languages, different foods we have, different social and religious practices. So diversity refers to religious, cultural, regional, linguistic, and geographical differences which exist among the differences. Diversity is about respecting the differences. So in spite of all these differences, can we live together and respect the distinct identities of each other? If you look at the Rotary, right from the word go in 1905, we had diversity built in. If you look at the founders of Rotary, right from Paul Harris was a lawyer, Hiram Shori was a merchant tailor, Sylvester Shield was a coal dealer, Gustavus Lower was a mining engineer. We had a diversity built in right from 1905. This is not something new to us. Now, let us dwell upon equity. We have to fundamentally understand there's a difference between equality and equity. If you look at this picture, it is very clear. Equality means you are providing the same thing to everybody. In this case, the shoe is an illustrative example that we are providing the same shoe to all. But equity is you customize. There's a solution. So the shoes are separate depending on, right, the intended objective. That is equity. But the larger thing of equity we need to understand is equity means removing the barriers. Whatever the barriers that are there for inclusion, is equity going to solve that? So if we look at our 4-way, it also speaks about equity. It says, is it fair to all the concerned? Is membership, right, a barrier for more members joining, or probably even continue in your clubs? So when we look at the flexibility guidelines, the flexibility approach, it is your call. This is not a mandate. This is not a dictum from RI or from me. Can you look at, right, a flexibility in terms of your dues? Maybe a staggered payment of, right, a couple of things instead of a one-time payment. Somewhere we need to look at the flexibility aspect to ensure equity. Are there barriers for attendance? If you look at Tom Gump, he always speaking about innovations and the types of clubs that what we have. So no longer we are looking at, right, the sprouting of the regular club. We have the passport clubs, the different forms of meeting, that's an e-club, we have the satellite club, and so many things are coming up. Attendance barriers. If you look at Binod Khaitan, our RLISA vice chair, he had shared a video wherein you can use a mixer and then co-facilitate both an in-person and a hybrid meeting. That is the solution for people to ensure they get engaged as far as your meetings is concerned. That is, right, how you make sure for attendance. I remember a couple of years back, PDG Rotarian Rekha Shetty, in those days when attendance was very, very important, there was a very senior Rotarian, and those days it was very important and people maintained 100% attendance. He was not keeping well. He was worried that he will not be able to keep up to his 100% attendance requirement because he was hospitalized. What did the club do? The club conducted the weekly meeting in the hospital besides his bedside. My dear friends, that is equity. That is how you bring in the inclusiveness. And we just discussed about the flexibility in the meeting options also that can be considered. Now let us look at inclusion. Rotary is creating experiences where, by and large, you are ensuring that everyone who comes in feels welcome, respected, and valued. So what does inclusion do? It gives you a sense of belonging. This is my Rotary Club. I'm proud to be a Rotarian. I would want to leverage on the internationality of Rotary and then probably look at positive outcomes to my global community. Because of inclusion, Rotarians feel respected, valued, and you are seen for what you are as an individual. No longer you can look at it telling that I will look at that person the way I look at myself. My dear friends, no. You are different, the other person is different. You need to look at what is his identity and what is his requirement. So inclusion builds in supportive energy and commitment from leaders, fellow Rotarians, and everybody. Now, what are the barriers for inclusion? So if you look at this punctured tire, this is the story of Rotary for the past 15 years. It is a deflated tire where, right, you are pumping in a lot of members. And sometimes, no, you're completely pumping it up. But can it hold? It's not able to hold, right? So Rotary is a similar situation, right? And even if you look at the numbers that will be released on 1st August, is not that great. So can we remove those barriers? Can we have better retention rates? And also in the process, right, the attraction rates. So if you look at it from a business parlance, it is less expensive for us to focus on customer retention than on, right, attraction perspective. Same rationale holds good for Rotary too. So what are our inclusion channels? I've not listed everything. I'm just giving you a few things. Do some of them feel that Rotary is an elite organization only for the wealthy? It doesn't cost much. Do we appeal to the millennials? Is there inclusion at all levels, be it at the board level, be it at the project level, be it right at any level as such? Do we consult somebody when we're taking up a service project? Sometimes we do make a mistake that before we do a community assessment, we have assumed that that particular community needs what you think is right. So are we consulting? So by design, you need to build these things in. Measurement is very important, be it D, E, or I. So we have to have a measurement process. So what is it that we can look at when we're looking at a measurement or some sort of metrics, right, from an inclusion perspective? Is like you have to address from a policy perspective where you build in consistency. We cannot have isolated right instances and blow our trumpets. So as a policy which can be driven through a training or some other intervention, right? Do we know whom we are letting in? How do we see them? Whom will we let them in? What you let them do and how you let them do it? This will speak about, right, our inclusion practices. Now, if you look at in 2019, we had a DEI right policy as such. Now, Rotary has moved from a policy to code of conduct. The code of conduct means we are talking about actionable items. Actionable items means this is a shall, this is a mandate. I will not be able to delve into the entire code of conduct because of paucity of time. I just wanted to touch base, but there is one important word in the code of conduct that it is emphasizing on. It is speaking about participants. So when we look at participants, it is looking at both internal and external to Rotary. So please do not confine your DEI activities only internal to Rotary. You may make a beginning, but at the end of it, it has to have a very holistic perspective. Now, we are all aware of the strategic plan. We are all aware of the action plan. DEI is going to work only when it is going to work in tandem with the action plans aligned with the DEI. So what happens is we need to have an integrated approach. So we are looking at the strategic planning, we're looking at the 4 priorities, we're looking at the 14 goals, and each one of them can be embedded DEI where it is relevant and practical. So if you look at it, I've just used one example as an illustrative example in terms of the priority, in terms of expanding the reach. So if you look at the first 3 bullet points, they are more from an action plan perspective as an outcome of strategic plan, where you're talking about, they are from a DI perspective. That means you're talking about, can we engage with service club external to Rotary and learn about their DI strategies? Can we identify some perceived barriers, right, from their joining with us? Can we get more visibility by participating in their local community needs? Then finally, we're looking at, right, can we have more partnerships? Thereby, we're going to probably have, right, a couple of more service projects. Now, the big question to everybody is, where do we make a beginning? So we need to look at the maturity model of DEI. This is something that I have just put it across. This is not a maturity model of anybody. Probably a couple of days after I work more, you will see a copyright symbol next to that. So every club will be at some level of maturity from a DEI perspective. Probably at level 1, something exists, but it's a static process. There is nothing dynamic in it. So whatever we've been doing, right? For the last 1 decade, 2 decades, or a couple of years, we are stuck with that. We don't want to change. The second level is where we start embracing change. My dear friends, cultural transformation initiates or happens only when you embrace change. If you don't embrace change, then what happens is we don't even know that, yes, we were relevant in the past. Will we be relevant in the future? It's a big question mark. So the moment we start embracing change, then you can build in, right, an integrated approach which will imbibe the strategic planning and the DEI perspective. The third level is where you're looking at a strategy. So the strategy will be broad-based, 3 years or 5 years. That's a call of the club. The fourth level is we are talking about disruption. You may be wondering, what is disruption from a Rotary perspective? We are looking at disruption as a change maker. We're looking at as a game changer, right? Overall, from a service organization or a membership-based organization, in terms of, right, is Rotary, right, leveraging upon, right, DEI or an integrated approach of strategic planning and the DEI as such. So, my dear friends, there has to be a value proposition. What is the value proposition from an integrated DEI? This calls for that each one of us take responsibility, that we maintain the desired culture. Paul Harris gave us this on a beautiful platter, right? Today, we are close to that again, 1.2 million. Are we building in the right culture? Can we see light probably after another 100 or odd years? It is everybody's important to ensure we have a right culture, right? You need to look at, we spoke about, right, a culture audit. So you need to look at some fake leaders who got certain traits. They start using the word I, rather than we. Do they give credit to the team? Are we speaking about outcomes in terms of impact? Are we talking about accomplishment? We have this habit of saying, I'm the first in the world, first in the region to do this, etc. Nobody has achieved this. We need to speak about outcome. More than outcomes, I would actually speak the language of impact. So when people feel they're accepted and they're part of something, they're more than willing to support one another. And that's the goals, right, of your Rotary Club or Rotary at large. So I would like to end by saying DEI is a journey. We need to look at what stages we are there with respect to the DEI maturity model. So the DEI is going to help us, right? It's going to be a catalyst for the organization growth, building and transformation, and thereby advancing the object of Rotary. We cannot prepare ourselves and Rotary for an uncertain future if we are not elevating and activating all people at their fullest capacity. Why I'm speaking about that is, if you look at, there's a research done by Gallup in the US workforce, where they say the engagement level is only about 30%, 23% in fact. I'm sure it holds good in Rotary too. Even if it is on the maximum, it will be about 30%. That means we have 30% of the so-called 1.2 million Rotarians plus the Rotractors that are not being optimally utilized. So DEI is the bedrock of a progressive organization. Can Rotary be left behind? I don't think so. We should be left behind, right? I thank you for this opportunity, and I'll take any questions here.
Yeah. Thank you, Mohan, for a lovely presentation. I know there are very many questions into the minds. We have PDG Subbu to moderate the question answers. Subbu, could you start the questions, please?
Well, I mean, thank you, CM, and good evening, good afternoon, or good morning to all of you. I'm delighted to be here. I can rarely be called moderate in terms of that term, because my views sometimes are not very moderate. But anyway, going by the exposition of Mohan and request of CM asked, put your questions in the chat box, and I will first start taking up one of the questions. The first question that came up here in the chat box was, yeah, how the concept of inclusion is different from concept of fellowship. Are they both the same? This is a question from CA Nitin to everyone, but I guess we would let Mohan answer this because he's the one who has given us the exposition on the subject. So Mohan, go ahead. Inclusion, different from fellowship or same?
Absolutely.
Nitin Kumar Agarwal. Yeah, I think so.
So if you look at fellowship, it is one of the interventions by which you make them inclusive. So what happens is, I wouldn't say they are separate. They are part and parcel. A good fellowship will ensure right inclusion. That is what I would like to see.
Okay.
Because fellowship is the cornerstone of Rotary.
Well, I mean, that's well answered. I would probably add a little bit to this here. You know, when you are talking about fellowship, you're just basically talking about meeting and greeting and enjoying with people whom you know.
Right.
When you talk about inclusion, you're talking about a very deliberate act. You're talking about a deliberate act of ensuring that every single person who either wants to interact with you or to have to do something with your club, you make them first feel comfortable and you include them in your process. That is really what it is. Fellowship is something, I would say that it is feeling good as opposed to, you know, making them feel good. That is really what it is. And that's what I think. Okay. Ashoka, can I go ahead and ask your question?
Yeah. Sure,
okay.
sure.
Yes, please.
Ashoka's question, considering the present burning problems and issues in the Indian Rotary clubs, is it advisable to decide our order of priority as first inclusion and then equity and then diversity when we start implementing DEI? It's a very, very significant question that is asked. Mohan, let's hear your views.
Yes, PDG Ashoka.
Does it need to be? Ashoka says,
yes.
Reverse. Should it be IED instead of DEI?
So, PDG Ashoka, if you look at it, cultural transformation is not an overnight process. It is not an overnight process. Second thing is, I had always mentioned that you cannot work in isolation. You cannot work in silos. No, D separately, E separately, I separately. All three have to be integrated. Only when the D, E, and I gets synchronized, that is where the belonging comes in. So I will not be looking at it from a sequential perspective. I would say all three need to coexist, right, in harmony. Only then the sense of belongingness will come in.
Brilliant. Okay. I guess Ashoka,
Thank you.
That's to answer your question, because I know that Ashoka himself is a DEI exponent in our zone as well as his district. There's another question that has been asked by Bhaskar and Periyaraja. He says, is it possible to have diversity in single-digit membership club?
Firstly, you need to look at when we start our journey, what is right our minimum membership strength that is required to charter a club. And from that, from a double digit, if you come down to probably a single digit, you need to look at, right, there is a serious problem that you need to acknowledge. DI is not a magic wand unless and until we embrace the change. So the change process is something you need to accept and say, happened is happened. Can we undergo this transformation? The realization has to come in. And only then, right, the change can happen. Just by bringing in a DI perspective, are you able to change it from single digit to double digit? May or may not be. So it is a very multifaceted approach that what you need to take.
Okay, wonderful. This is a very interesting question from a very interesting person. DEI was hidden in the manual of procedures. What made Rotary International to bring it to the fore? BK is the one who's asking this question, obviously. So that's why it's a very direct question. And hidden in the MOP now has come to the fore. Why? What made it? What? I'm sure all of us know, but I think you need to say it.
Sure. So if you look at many of the things are already embodied even before this whole movement and the need arose from the United States perspective. So when I always keep speaking about DEI, I tell them that DEI is beyond a George Floyd perspective. DEI from a Rotary International is, can we bring in more members? Can we ensure that's a bigger engagement, better engagement, resulting in probably more service projects or some other fellowship activities being taken place, because we are talking about bigger, better and bolder projects. So today, if you take, the attrition levels have been extremely high in the past 15 years. I'm sure we will not deny what is our engagement levels at a club level. We don't have factual data. We don't have published data on it. So from the Rotary perspective, we need to look at this from our perspective rather than compliance perspective. Suppose you are a business organization, then what happens is, the first level of the maturity model, basically you will be having a compliance perspective. So there are laws, both US, India, and all the other countries where we have the participants from, where the law mandates that you address a certain parts of diversity. That is where there's a larger emphasis in terms of gender, etc. But I think from a Rotary context, it is much bigger, and we need to understand that bigger picture and then traverse the journey of DEI.
Okay. Thank you, Mohan. I mean, that's a pretty good explanation. I don't know whether I think it was Vinod Khaitan who asked that question. I don't know what he feels about it. Vinodji, your opinion.
Well, I think Mohan is the expert. I'm learning from him today. So
all of us are.
No, just to add, before even we started speaking about this, diversity is already there as part of our core values. It's not something new to it. It is there right from the day we started in 1905. We're talking about the diversity of the members. We also we were heavily focused on classification. Today nobody speaks about the classification principles, but there was a very unique proposition compared to any other service organization in the world. So the thing is not far off. If we realize the importance, we'll again come back to the principles and tenets of Rotary on classification principle.
I mean, Mohan, this is a supplement question to you. Has suddenly Rotary woken up to the fact that we were ignoring the classification part of it and said, okay, let's bring it through this door. Let's bring it through the diversity door and start talking about classification, which is a phenomenal, it is a very unique and excellent practice that Rotary had. And probably Rotary said, okay, let's not say, oh, we forgot classification, let's emphasize classification. No. What Rotary is saying is, let's call it diversity now, and let's bring in diversity. Maybe, I don't know. It is just an opinion.
Yes, you need to understand.
Tom may probably say something on it. Yes. If he has, we would definitely like to hear what you have to say on it, Tom.
Let me complete and then I'll ask Tom to speak. Yeah. But we need to understand the larger purpose and objectives of diversity is whatever age, whatever gender, whatever we are speaking about the diversity, it ultimately will fructify in diversity of thought process. So the way you think and the way somebody else thinks is different. Can we bring the thought process to address a challenge?
Absolutely.
That is
agree.
the larger perspective of diversity.
No, no,
Over to you, Tom.
I was just
Tom,
adding
you
a
have
little
something
bit
to
of
say.
spice into the mix. That's all. I wasn't questioning the thing. Okay, PDG
Over to you,
Raj,
Tom. Over to you, Tom Gum. You
Tom,
have
yeah,
something
go ahead,
to say.
Tom. Yeah.
Well, thank you so very much for having me here today with you. This has just been an excellent presentation. And there's so many things I would like to say, but I will try to keep it short and I will add some spice to it. So I was district governor when George Floyd was murdered, and that happened in my district. So I knew that we had to do something. If the world was going to change for the better, Rotary had to be that impetus to make that change. So I interviewed a bunch of different companies and ended up choosing the YMCA Equity and Innovation Center out of North Carolina, which is in the southern United States, and brought them up to Minneapolis, which is middle north United States. And I learned many things. And I can tell you that Mohan is an expert on this. I've heard lots of different conversations. I participated in DEI as a panelist with Jennifer Jones and Todd Jenkins. And I tell you, you have an expert here in Mohan. To answer the question about classifications, I tried to join Rotary in 1996. I was an assistant district attorney. That's a prosecutor. You work for the state. I was denied access into Rotary because that classification, law enforcement, was taken. So it wasn't until 2013 when I moved from Georgia, which is southern, up to Minneapolis, where someone asked me to join. That individual asked me 12 times before I said, yes, I will come visit your club. And then I went to one meeting, I was hooked, I stayed. But the point is, we have to be inclusive. We have to do things differently. You know, John Hugo at a meeting Saturday night at headquarters gave a presentation and said, these are the biggest problems facing our beloved organization. Membership was number one. So what do we do about that? We need to include people. You know, that night I was going back to my hotel room and there's 5 Rotarians at a bar. That kind of sounds like a joke. 5 Rotarians at a bar. It's the start of a joke, but it's not, it's very serious. They were having almost like an intervention on this young bartender who was delivering their drinks to them, telling them all about Rotary. And so when I walked by, they called me over and they said, Tom, you're the membership expert. Give them your elevator pitch. Well, I thought about it and I thought, I don't have an elevator pitch. Mohan was right. We have 150,000 people coming in every year. We don't have an attraction problem. We're that flat tire or that going flat tire, they go out the door. I wish every country was like India because you guys are doing it right. And I feel like I'm preaching to the choir. But what I told them is, we don't need to all say 2 minutes about what Rotary is. We need to ask that individual, what does he want out of Rotary? So that's what I did. I asked him, what do you want out of Rotary? And he told us he wants to rub shoulders with people of significance when he starts his career. So my friends, I'd say, let's go for belonging. Let's think about DEI. Let's have those uncomfortable conversations and let's get towards belonging. And if we have that, we'll also have justice. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tom. Okay, here is a question from PDG Rajkumar. Interesting question. Many probably won't even voice it, but then he has. How do we ensure an old stroke senior club, which is happy in its ways, they remain exclusive and are not prepared for change?
The answer is very simple, that if you take strategic planning, if you take DI, these things are not a mandate. If the club wants to be relevant, they have to embrace change. If they want to remain status quo, then the choice is there. So many times when you start speaking about these things, people come back and then ask me, why are you asking me to do that? Already we're doing so many things. My simple question to them is, would you probably take this stance if it was your own business? Then the answer is simple, no. Why don't you consider, right, Rotary, right, as your own organization? I'm extremely proud of Rotary. I always keep saying that if Rotary were not part of me, there would have been a big void. The beauty of Rotary is one of the best, right, universes for me to learn. But for Rotary, I wouldn't have got an opportunity to dwell into DEI. I wouldn't have got an opportunity to dwell into strategic planning. So it is the call of the club. If they want to be relevant, if they want to be meaningful, if they want to embrace change, bring in, right, new blood, new thought process, they have no choice but to embrace the change.
Yeah, thank you, Mohan. I have a little bit of a take on this. You know, for such of us who have all been in the part of what was called as the joint family system in India, I'm sure it was there everywhere in the world till the nuclear family took over. But in a joint family, you really put up with a lot of things. Now, every generation has got to keep changing. There is no two ways about it. My dad's generation was different from mine, and my sons are very different, and it goes on. But what I believe is the last 20 years, millennials, as you would say, the kind of unlearning that the elder generation had to do has been huge as compared to the unlearning the earlier generations had to do. This is a very personal opinion of mine, but I believe it is true. For instance, let us take case of India. I mean, today, a divorce is definitely something part of every family, and you live with people who are divorced because they are your own. Living together is very much part of everybody's family. Many don't talk about it yet, but then you definitely know, especially when people have gone outside the country, marrying outside your race, your religion, marrying outside your complete communities, it has all become very, very common. I believe it, diversity and including. See, you will include your own. How will you exclude? How long will you exclude your own? You will include. That is the kind of thing that is happening. It will happen over a period of time in all societies. It is just that I think Rotary is trying to say, please be conscious of this and ensure that this consciousness is reflected in the conversations that you have and every time. In India, definitely things are changing drastically. I can't talk about other places, though I do interact with people from the United States and Germany very often, but I do believe that everywhere it is changing too. And therefore, that question, unlearning, is very important. It has become more important than learning, in my opinion, at this point in time. You have to unlearn a lot of stuff before you really actually become relevant in today's context. There is another very nice question that has...
Let me answer this, Subbu, to you.
Yeah, go ahead, Mohan. I'm sorry, I mean, you're the speaker.
How I would look at it. I would look at it from two perspectives. One is the culture of the club. Next is I would look at it from the four-way test. So my culture of the club is, how do I respect the Rotarians who put in decent time and are not able to give their time, or not able to keep themselves abreast of technology or knowledge. That's the culture of the club. Probably I will have a process which is tailor-made to say, I will use that sort of Rotarians I'll bucket them and probably use them as mentors. Now, if you look at four-way test, so in the process of four-way test, the first question, is it the truth? Is this the way I need to address somebody? Is this the way I need to handle the situation? That's a call that the club will take. So it is going to be the cultural issue as far as the club is concerned. And also, we need to understand four-way test is still relevant and it is eternal. Nothing will change. It remains to be the tenets of Rotary.
Okay, great. Here is a request from Sham, Zone 6. Looking at your DEI maturity model, Mohan, could you please explain disruption once again?
So what happens is, we have a lot of competition, correct? We have a lot of competition. We need to accept that. Tomorrow, using a combo of strategic planning and DI built into it, can we be the Teslas of the world from a service organization perspective? That is my disruption.
Great. Okay.
Yes, sir. Tom would like to say
Brilliant.
something.
Now,
Yes, once again, Subbu. Tom would like to speak.
Yeah.
Mohan and Sabu are 100% right. I mean, Rotary is delivering a product, and that product is the club experience. And when we deliver it, we're delivering it like we used to deliver it. We're not asking the young people what they want. If you ask young people what they want to serve in a diverse environment. We're missing out on these potential people of action because we're not providing a club environment that fits them. If we look at the new clubs that have started over the last 18 months, 2 years, they're more diverse. And Mohan's right, we keep statistics on male and female, but we don't keep statistics on diversity. But if you look at a screen of a new club as opposed to a traditional legacy club, there's more diversity. I have to run to another meeting. I'm so sorry, but thank you so much for inviting me today. And congratulations on all your membership success. And I'm here if you need me for anything. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you, Tom, for joining us.
Tom. Thank you. Thank you very much for contributing, being here. Inspiration. There is a question from Balachandra Dikshit. He's asking, there are some types of clubs like all-women clubs, passport club, cost-based clubs. Now, do they fit into the concept of DEI?
It's a very straightforward answer. It is. Because if you look at a cost-based club, the cause, right, is the larger objective, but a diverse members will achieve, right, the cost-based objective. So it does fit in. So it fits into any type of clubs. The simple answer is yes.
You didn't answer all women clubs.
Except all women's club.
Yeah. But sometimes, yes, sometimes it's an opportunity for us to undo things because no organization is perfect in the world. Sometimes, like the example that what you quoted, we have to unlearn. Probably the unlearning itself will create, right, a new thought process. And then we could have, right, a hybrid sort of environment where you could have multiple clubs in one environment.
Subbu, Poonam would like to ask a question. Poonam.
Poonam, Poonam is there. Poonam, can you put your video on and ask the question, please?
No, I think she just put up a hand like that.
Okay. Let's move forward.
Anu Naran. Anu?
Yeah.
No, I don't have anything to ask. I'm really enjoying all the questions. Thank you so much.
Mon, I have a question which has come directly on the mobile. How is Rotary trying to affect DEI? How is Rotary trying to affect DEI?
CM, if you look at it, we have just commenced the journey of DEI. So what happens is our first step is sensitization. Only by sensitizing, right, all the Rotary members, right, we can commence our journey. So it's a pretty long journey that what we need to undertake, but I'm pretty confident with the way Rotary International is looking at a global picture, we will not be left behind.
Okay. You see, Anup Sinha has got a very relevant question. Mohan, you need to address this. Mohan mentioned that current levels of engagement is 30%. It's better than the Pareto principle, the 80-20 principle. Is it not a healthy sign to begin with?
I would say both yes and no, right? What are we doing about that 70%? Right? Rather than just focus on people and we are not looking at optimum utilization, I would focus on ensuring at least out of that 70%, can I bring at least another 10, 15, 20% on the bandwagon?
Right.
So if this 30% is going to make this difference, Can you imagine what happens if I have another 10% and 20%? So my take is, suppose I need to do a service project, and suppose I need 100 hours for a particular service project. And if 30 hours is going to come through our existing membership based on what we have, probably I will bring in that 70% or whatever be the number of hours or days together is required from external to Rotary. And I will extend myself the reach, and then at some day ensure that they are part of Rotary. That is how I would look at the second priority of Rotary.
Oh,
I
brilliant.
think the sample is the hand project of Mohan. How he has reached so many people.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
Can I just make one more comment, Subbu?
Yeah, go ahead.
The code of conduct of Rotarians. I don't think we have really discussed that. That is a very important aspect as far as DEI is concerned. So, Amor, can you throw some light on that?
The code of conduct is an outcome from the DEI initiative that what we started in 2019 when Holger Nack was the RA president. Rotary realized that just having a policy itself will not suffice. So what the code of conduct has done is, it is aligned directly to the priorities as far as the strategic plan is concerned. That is all the 4 priorities. And it is also aligned with the specific goals of the strategic plan, because you have 14 goals in strategic plan. So the DI perspective of the goals will align to the DI perspective. And that is where you get an integrated approach. And the most important part of the DI conduct, the code of conduct is, it is speaking about looking at beyond internal to Rotary. It is used the word participants. So tomorrow, can I bring the DI perspective right from a service project perspective? Suppose I'm doing 100 heart surgeries. Can I look at the diversity from the 100 heart surgeries that what we conduct? By doing a community need assessments, can I bring in that inclusivity and thereby the belongingness? That is how it is used, that word participant. We can actually do a very, very detailed thing as far as the DI code itself is considered. But because of lack of time, I actually didn't dwell into it. But this is the gist of it.
PK, I will just add one sentence to it, in the sense that I would think that the code of conduct is how to implement DEI. It says, how do you conduct yourself so that DEI actually gets really on the ground. I'll give you a very pure example that I have seen in some Rotary clubs. There is a community service program. Somebody in the community were given a few, some donations. They were given some help. Everything was fine till the meeting was over. And then you had this group of people who were being helped. They were there. And then the meeting was over. And lo and behold, 50% or 60% of the club moved towards, the corner. Where the corner is the fellowship corner. And the rest of the people moved towards the food counters. And then here these visitors, they didn't know whether to stay or not to stay. And it became a little dicey until somebody saw what was going on. And then immediately asked these people to come and, start having their dinner. And but I don't know what impression they would have had when they left that room. That's all. That's what I'm trying to say. And I believe that is the sensitizing part, which probably DEI talks about and Mohan talk about. And I believe that's what we need to be aware of. There are a few more.
I'll just give one example of what Binoji has raised from the DI code of conduct. If you take our strategic plan where we speak about expand our reach, so we are looking at expanding the reach beyond Rotary as an example. How can I partner with more service organizations to collaborate and then probably be more impactful? Now, from a DI perspective, what the code of conduct says is, can I understand the best practices of this service organization of their DI practices? And is there anything for Rotary to learn from it, and can I imbibe into it? That is what the DEI code of conduct and the strategic planning synergy comes in.
Okay. There are a few other questions, some of them, in jest also, but here is one that probably can add a little bit of lightness to the whole thing. How do we convince our senior members in implementing DEI in clubs? Many clubs are indirectly controlled by veteran senior Rotarians.
You come back to part 2. We have a topic on effective leadership strategies. How do you handle that in your club is completely different to how I handle it in my situation. You just need to go back to that basics, and I'm sure there is a way to work around that. As long as we believe this workaround is good enough for everybody.
Excellent.
Can I request Krishna to put in his two pennies? Krishna Shetty.
Enjoying the talk of Mohan. We are going
Krishna,
to have
come
the
on.
DEI and strategic planning seminar. For that, he will be the chief guest. Just enjoying, really good.
Good, Krishna. First, nice to see you after a long time. I mean,
Yeah.
Kanut, do you have anything to say?
Yeah.
I have nothing to say.
No, you have to unmute yourself, Knut.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mohan. I just think the whole program was terrific, very informative, and I think a lot of food for thought. We talk about the Northeast. I'm in New York, so that's pretty Northeast and America. And we don't have any problem attracting members. We have a problem retaining members. And I think some attention and focus on DEI by the members of our clubs would make a big difference in the retaining aspect. And so I appreciate your presentation. I hope that the recording comes out well enough that we can share that. I happen to be on the membership team, and I tell you what, every time we gather, we talk about DEI, and as you've said, it's something, it is new to Rotary. It's only a couple of years old at best. So I think sharing some of these ideas, and in fact, this could even be something that should maybe be in one of our part 1, 2, and 3s, a session that we could have to introduce this to informed members and those that want to progress and know more about Rotary. So I thank you. I think truly a terrific presentation and most informative. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Kumar.
Thank you.
Thank you, Knut.
Arup Sinha.
Yeah, I have a question. In fact, it was in the chat box, but I thought we were just about to end. This comes back to the passport members. Now, we have got 3 passport members and planning to add few more. Now, somewhere after having them on board, the problem that comes in, how do we make them engaged? Because one of them is sitting out of Delhi and I'm at Ahmedabad. So out of excitement, I did make him a member, but at times I worry, have I taken the right decision? Now, the next passport number I'm going to get is one is from Indore and one is from Jamshedpur. One is with Tata Sons and others with the carbon credit company. So I'm really wondering, should I go for it or should I not?
Yeah, Arup, see, it is not a DI issue. It is a systemic issue, right? So let us take, say, you're going to work on, right, either on the virtual mode or the hybrid mode. You need to figure out, what is the sort of engagement process that what you're looking at. Let us take, say, if you intend to take up a project and there has to be a community need assessment that is to be done. And if that is the in-person community need assessment, right? And if there are some local Rotarians residing there, you can use them. Or if there is somebody in other part of the world, but they can guide because of their experience or domain expertise, they can probably, help your people who are at the ground level. So I think it is a systemic issue. It is not a DI issue as such. Unless and until DI is a contributing factor for you as a non-starter, which I don't think so at this time.
No, that's not.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much.
Okay. Thank you, Mohan. I mean, CM, this is going to be the last one, and it's going to be a question which is from the 30,000-foot view perspective. Only Ashoka can ask such a question. So I'm going to ask this question of Mohan or anyone else who want to answer this. Will managing the influence of prevailing local community and country's culture be a challenge when we want to embrace DEI culture? Today, India is in a situation, or we have got our own culture, our own country's leanings and things like that. Is that going to be a challenge in embracing DEI? Is the question. Mohan? I know it's a yes or no answer, but then you can.
No. I would look at it, since I fundamentally come from a risk management background. I would like to ask a question. What are the risks of not integrating people at the bottommost of the pyramid? So you need to have a connectivity. You need to have an integration process. And if that integration is essential for the larger success of the intended objective, you need to make rooms for it. So today, there are various self-help groups at the grassroots level. Without any cultural barriers, they are successful. If you take the RCCs itself in the eastern part of the world, for which our Binodji is involved, they have risen above, because what happens is they've been mentored, they've been coached, they've been tutored. The whole ecosystem is set up for these things to thrive. So finally, it is left up to us in terms of how do we weave this in. So I would look at it in a very positive aspect. Yes, there are cultural barriers, but we need to overcome that.
Yep. Thank you, Mohan. And let me thank Mohan and the rest of the people who participated in this discussion. It was a delight moderating it. I know the first step in DEI is addressing the elephant in the room. Very rarely we address the elephant in the room. I think maybe we need to. Ashoka asked the question. I know what the elephant is. I'm not going to step out of turn and answer that. Mohan answered it very beautifully, but we have to address the elephant in the room. So with that, thank you very much for this opportunity, CM.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Subbu, as ever, moderating in a different style always gives the new perspectives. And that is what RLI forums and symposiums are all for. We need to discuss it. Unless we discuss, unless we share our concerns, there is no way forward. Thank you, Mohan. And Mohan, your last closing remarks on DEI before I hand over.
Yeah, before that, let George do something, because George has been very silent today.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, George.
George, we haven't heard George this evening, all of evening,
No, I've been closely following what Mohankumar is saying, but this diversity fellowship, diversity, equity and inclusion has been there all the time in Rotary, like Mohan said. But 2019 only we have dusted it and brought it out. Why? The reason is we are concentrating on membership development and retention. We want more women, we want more young people. How to bring them in, how to make them stay is the problem. And that is where this diversity. Diversity, of course, it's not going to be a big problem, bringing in people from different ages, different sex, different gender, all that. But equity and inclusion is going to be a huge problem.
Yes.
And we've got to address that equity and inclusion problem. This is where what Mohan has been explaining beautifully will help us how to integrate, how to be inclusive, and how to bring them in. So it's a beautiful session. And how we bring it to the club level and how to do it with the members and how to it, because it is really terrible that, last year, if you take the statistics, from 11,62,000, we have just gone to 11,72,000. Whereas Shekhar Mehta said, each one bring one. And we said we are going to go from 12 lakhs to 13 lakhs. But we haven't even reached 12 lakhs. You must know this fact. So 1162 to 1172. Why? We have brought in so many members, but we have lost a huge number. Why we have lost the equity and inclusion? That is where we have lost the members. And we've got to work on this, and we've got to study more, and then how to include these people, how to give them all a way to produce a playlist and how everybody dances. The playlist production and the dancing is going to be very important rather than bringing people to dance. It's not just bringing people to dance, it's also writing the playlist and the ability to bring in the people to dance.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, George, for contributing.
CM,
Yeah.
8:01, I have to get into another meeting. So,
Sure. We are about to close. Okay.
If I bluntly leave, forgive me.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Subbu. Yeah, Mohan, your closing remarks on the whole thing before I hand over for the vote of thanks.
See, it's a very uncomfortable situation to have this candid talk. But if you don't have this conversation, the question is, will we be relevant? That's a question that what we need to ask. And if we have to be relevant, we have no choice, but to engage ourselves in this conversation. That's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mohan, for closing remarks, which gives us some thoughts to ponder upon. And before we meet again, we should find out what has been the takeaway from today's learning. Though we call it as a symposium, but there are a lot of learnings to take it forward. Anyway, next time we discuss it more. May I request Alia Syed, a Rotarian from District 3272, to propose a vote of thanks. Alia.
Hello everyone, Rotary greetings. And this is Rotarian Alia Syed from District 3272. What a beautiful example Mohanji start with. When a flower does not bloom, you fix the environment and not the flower. I consider it a great privilege to propose a vote of thanks for such an enriching, enjoyable, and thought-provoking learning event from this platform. On behalf of Rotary Leadership Institute South Asia and RLISA Symposium convener, CM Bendre, I extend a very hearty vote of thanks to Rotarian Mohankumar for his great session towards making us understand the true spirit of DEI. I must mention our deep sense of appreciation for RLI International Vice Chair Nat Johnson for his presence and bringing in food for thought. Further, we are grateful to PDG Tom Graham for his valuable input. We also would like to acknowledge our gratitude to RLI International Chair, PDG Dr. George Sandraji, RLISA Vice Chair Vinod Ketan, all PDGs, DGEs, and Rotarians. We thank you all for being with us as a part of this wonderful journey of learning together that all of us are taking together from the platform of RLISA, and together we'll keep continuing with it. Thank you.
Thank you, Alia, for this lovely word of thanks. And yes, friends, it's time to close around and then look around for the next symposium next month. And as we always say, next month we'll have another topic to be picked up. Yeah, Subbu. Okay, we today crossed around 100 plus. Yeah, I know we have restrictions 100 plus, but few came in and out, so we could adjust of it. So Mohan, thank you for a thought-provoking, discussion on the topic. I always call, we discuss it, we share it to learn further. Thank you, and thank you all the participants today.